I think
Vaidya Rammanohar ji, who is kind enough to come back to be with us. The first topic we did on this series, which is called the connecting dots from past to future. The first of the topics was surgery in Ayurveda. And thereafter, we have done another session of Vedic farming and holistic living with Dr. Sri Kumar. And this is our third and a topic perhaps close to my line of work. I'm a psychiatrist. So my name is Dr. Srinivasa Sastry Malladi. I practice in Visakhapatnam, and I also have founded Sohamvidya, which is the platform for practical application of Sanatana Dharma and psychology in our day-to-day life. So on the basis of that, I feel I have both qualifications to be interested in this topic as a psychiatrist and as a practitioner of Sanatana Dharma. See, as a psychiatrist, I'm practicing clinical medicine. I'm treating and assessing patients. And we practice it because it works, isn't it? It works. But having said that, we know that there are often cases where even our best efforts are unable to understand certain patient problems and treat them. So don't we look beyond? I'm sure we look beyond to look at what are those alternative options available. And they may come from anywhere. I mean, why should we not be open to ideas, new ideas? And that's what science is all about, isn't it? But I'm often surprised to see how all hell breaks loose, and especially when we don't want to hear anything beyond what is tangible as per science. I think modern world sees science as if it is the only way to answer, and but I'm not finding fault with science. I think science is the way, but it's the approach that possibly those practitioners of science feel quite kind of privileged to say us or my way or no way. And this is where I'm troubled. I can see that as a psychiatrist how it is important to be open to new ideas. So when we had Bhuta Vidya or Bhuta Vidya course being introduced in BHU, I have seen series of articles in print media as well as electronic media, and all these rationalists with their academic arrogance come out really kind of pulling things down to superstition and nothing beyond that. Why do people do these things? You know, the journalists and the so-called academics, why do they do these things? I'm more interested in that rather than whether Bhuta Vidya really has a place currently or not. I'm sure it has a place, but I'm more interested as a psychiatrist to see why do people have these kind of absurd exclusivist kind of views when it comes to anything that is not tangible to our senses. All right, I'll show you, for instance, this particular picture. I think it's more of a mockery than anything, where they're trying to show that the ancient world is now trying to treat the modern world problems. Okay, that doesn't help. I've put this in, this is a Telugu newspaper article. I'm just going to read out or translate the first line. The very first line says, superstitions are being encouraged by Uttar Pradesh's Banaras Hindu University. And thereafter, it talks about how this course, what this course is all about. And at the end, it goes back to saying yet again, the Bhuta, Preta, Pishacha, and all those things, and people are making money out of it and promoting superstitions. Now, is this how responsible journalism should be? I don't see that these are like manipulative propaganda kind of exercises in the guise of news. And this is where we are wondering as to what news is good news nowadays. I think in this current world, anything is good news as long as it is factual. We have come to that, and not sensation and not a manipulative narrative, right? So this is where I also would want to introduce something else we pick up our concepts of Bhuta Vidya from, which is from movies, right? Perhaps I'll share this clipping a little later. I'll stop here in terms of my rant on what I had to say. And at this point, I'll welcome Sri Rammanohar ji. Namaste, Mohdaya. Welcome,
Namaste.
Mohdaya.
Namaste.
Right, namaste.
Namaste.
All right. Let me just pin you wherever your video is, because, yes, yes. Yeah, great. So, as most of you perhaps may know, Ramanoharji, he's a Ayurvedic practitioner. He heads the research department in Amrita Medical School in Kerala. I had the privilege of meeting him last year, or the year, I think it was last year, in Applied Indic Psychology gathering. And we had lots of interesting discussions. I was actually quite privileged to hear some of those beautiful things from Ayurvedic concepts. So, and possibly some of you would have heard him on either YouTube or perhaps in live discussions about various topics of Ayurveda. So I will really pick his brains today yet again. And I'm hoping to have a crisp dialogue here. I'm going to grill him on certain aspects as well, so that we get the best possible answers. Ramanoharji, the first question is, Bhuta Vidya, are people right in considering Bhuta Vidya to be all about ghosts and nothing but ghosts?
That's absolutely wrong because the word Bhuta itself has so many connotations. And if you really look at the Ayurvedic context, it's certainly not used in the sense of the ghost. There are even better terms for ghosts like preta. Bhuta means any living being, and it includes also microorganisms. Bhuta Savishakrimi Pishajadaya. It is mentioned. Savishakrimis are also part of Bhuta, so they are kind of it can mean the past, it can mean a living being, it can mean the five elements. So if you look at the etymology and the derivations of the word bhuta, we have to be very careful about how we interpret it according to the context. And also, from an Ayurvedic point of view, I have tried to read the texts very, very carefully. There is no idea of ghost as we understand today, in white saris or moving around, which we can physically see. I mean, that kind of a description is completely absent in the Ayurvedic texts. So maybe we'll go one by one. At
Yep.
this point, I want to clearly point out, being very straight to your question, is that Bhuta cannot mean just ghosts, and Bhuta Vidya is not, demonology or exorcism.
Okay, but let me clarify here. As per Ayurvedic concepts, do ghosts or preta, pishacha exist?
Yeah, now this is a very interesting and important question. See, if you look at the entire worldviews we have in our classical texts, also in our Indian tradition, the Astika Nastika views.
Right.
So normally when we say Astika Nastika, we interpret them as theistic and atheistic, those who believe in God and those who do not believe in God. But in our tradition, the idea is it's not about God, it's about us, whether we will exist after death or not whether God exists or not. That was never debated in our tradition.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So if I am going to survive after my death, if I believe in my survival after my death, my whole life vision becomes broader because I have to plan not for one life, but for many lives. On the
Yeah.
other hand, if I do not believe that I will exist after one life, then my life vision is different. I have to plan only for one life. So those who planned and lived for only one life were called as Nastikas, because Nasti Paraloka iti Matiriyasham Nastika. And Astika is Asti Paraloka iti. Now, the whole idea here is what is this Paraloka and how, in what form do we exist after death? So that is where the whole idea of ghost comes. The popular belief is that when we die, we become ghosts, and then we start haunting places and even, possessing individuals. But in Ayurveda, there is no possibility of an embodied existence after you are dead. But Ayurveda does believe. Ayurveda has an Astika viewpoint, so we do believe that we will continue to exist, and there are multiple, you know, life cycles. There are it's one we are our life does not end with death. Death is only a pause; it continues. So the whole debate is on how do we exist? So we exist only in the mental world, according to Ayurveda, after death. There is no further physical manifestation. The only way to physically manifest again after you are dead is to be born in a new body.
Right. So I can clearly see that I've asked this before as well. Atma Vidya is a very core component of Ayurvedic concepts. Is that right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
So based on that, we exist beyond death,
yes.
and we continue to exist. Our Atma, we as Atma are permanent. And related to that question, I do often wonder where people often are very clear in understanding existence of God. Although you very nicely said we are not interested in existence of God. It's about whether we exist after death or not. And that's a very important clarification. People have this understanding that there is God, and God cannot be measured. And they are very clear that they need to understand that God cannot be proven to exist or not exist. But when it comes to anything beyond, as in paranormal, there is a burden of proof expected. So, does Ayurveda fall prey to having to prove existence of something which cannot be perceived by senses? Is it always under a pressure?
No, I mean in Ayurveda, we look at reality. Our ontology is quite broad.
Okay.
Vyaktam, avyaktam, vyakta, vyaktam. We say the world, our world of experiences, depending on our limitation of our perception. Our world is divided into three categories: the tangible, the vyaktam; the vyakta, vyaktam, partially tangible; and then the totally avyaktam, which is intangible. So just because something is intangible doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Because as we know, our sense organs have great limitations. They cannot even perceive beyond a certain range, whether it is light, sound, everything. So our limit, we cannot impose our limitations on reality. It is like closing our eyes and saying that the world doesn't exist. So that is not an approach taken in Ayurveda. Text like Charaka Samhita says, Pratyaksham hyalpam. What is visible or perceivable is very limited. Analpam hya pratyaksha. Most of the things that we infer through, logical reasoning or, uh, not direct perception. So acceptance of the intangible is very fundamental to Ayurveda. It's very different ways it is referred to as adrishtam, that which
Right.
can be seen.
So the acceptance of the intangible is what we also have to pay attention to in psychiatry, and that's what I was trying to get at. Because science lays an emphasis on presence of a proof of something which can be perceived by our senses, can be measured as well. For instance, I draw these parallels whenever I talk about psychiatry and physical medicine. Physical medicine, I can do some blood test to confirm something. I can do a brain scan even to pick up a tumor. But 95% of the times for psychiatric problems, I can't really show any proof of its existence, based on a measurement. So we can understand that. And I also believe that, therefore, fields like psychiatry or anything which relies on avyaktam, for instance, has to find its own ways of studying it. Spiritual sciences, if you can call them, need to be subjective in their research methodology, right? What would be the way forward, if at all? Bhuta Vidya, first of all, I'll need further clarification anyway about what Bhuta Vidya is, but let me still ask this question. the critics still need answers, and they are very right in asking questions.
True.
What's the way to kind of research, study, and kind of validate Bhuta Vidya in current times?
In Ayurveda, if you look at mental disorders, they are generally in Charaka, even Bhuta are classified under Unmada, which is like psychosis, all the psychiatric diseases, very serious psychiatric illnesses. But broadly, we can classify them into Unmada and then these Bhuta Grahas, which are often translated as possessions.
Mhm.
But if you carefully read the texts, what we understand is that these are very drastic personality disorders. I mean, we call a condition as a Bhutonmada when there is a very radical change in the personality. So I've always felt that what we are dealing with here are personality disorders where the individual's behavior and everything changes. But there is also an observation in our classical texts like Amartya Vag Vikrama Virya Cheshta. People exhibiting. So they have explained this approach is very in a very clinical point of view, operational definitions, how to deal with it, how to distinguish a normal Unmada from a Bhudonmada. So Lakshayat Jnana Vijnana Vakcheshta Bala Paurusham Purushe Apaurusham Yatra, when they show extremely strange and inhuman abilities, strength, inhuman strength,
Mhm.
or some people speaking languages that they have not really learned.
Mm.
And when such phenomenon is observed, so it's there has to be an observation like that. So there is a very clear clinical criteria. If you encounter such a radical personality change, then you have to classify it as Bhudonmada, not as an ordinary Unmada.
Right. So perhaps that leads to my question about how does Ayurveda conceptualize mental illness? So you're saying that there is Unmada and Bhutonmada, and Bhutonmada mostly relates to personality disorders. Am I right in understanding that?
Yeah, there's definitely a big change in personality, which is very difficult to explain. I mean, it's
Okay.
almost like that individual is behaving like another person.
Okay. So in modern context, Unmada would it mean psychosis, or does it also include depression and anxiety?
Yeah, it includes that also. But in Unmada, actually, the person is no longer in control of himself. So the criteria is Bhrashta Saradi Vadratha. It's a very
Okay.
nice imagery mentioned, which clarifies what is Unmada. That is a chariot without a charioteer.
Okay.
So the
Let,
person is not self-aware. The person is no
yeah,
longer,
yeah,
you are not able to also deal with that individual, negotiate. I mean, when you reach such a level of disturbance,
yeah.
yeah, that is what is called as Unmada.
Okay, we'll still stick to the title Bhuta Vidya, and because people would want to still hear more about is it ghost or is it not ghost. So we'll go back to that topic, and I'll show you this video clip. Of course, it is in Telugu, but it's from an old film. I'm sure everybody can easily relate to it. Actually, this is from a classic movie called Mr. A very nice movie actually, but this is a typical portrayal of both Vaidyam. For others who couldn't follow it, the guy was trying to figure out what illness she has, and she acts strangely, and he finally concludes that she has been possessed by a demon. So he goes out and asks for some lemons and such sort, and tries to capture the
Yeah.
ghost into the bottle and so on. Yeah. So is this Bhuta Vidya?
No, this is very because I have also thought a lot about this, and what really struck me was when you look at the management of even the Bhuta Grahas, it's purely medical. Of course, there are some religious elements like doing pujas, but
Mhm.
there's no exorcism. In Ayurveda, there is no question of, driving away the demon, or we are giving medicines. Most of the Bhudagna medicines, are herbs, which are also having anti-microbial activity. So, which is why I said there is an overlap
Mhm.
because they are invisible and you cannot see what is really happening. Ayurveda has a way of categorizing these things in The criteria is that something which is not visible or which you cannot see.
Mm-hmm.
It's in that sense that the Buddha is used here. So if you look at the treatment of Buddhas, there is no exorcism. I
Mm-hmm.
was really stuck by this fact,
So the
and that
exorcism is something which I guess you see the religious healers nowadays. You actually see in the evangelical kind of healing kind of things that we tend to see, where a guy would put his hand on the head and they'll collapse and have a fit, and all sorts of things happen. That's not something part of Ayurveda, is what you're saying.
yeah, Ayurveda has what you call as Daiva Vaipasharya Chikitsa, which is
Hmm.
given more emphasis here,
Hmm.
like bringing in the Sattva Guna, because according to Ayurveda, it is the imbalance of the Trigunas that cause mental
Right.
illnesses,
Right.
the Rajas, Sattva,
Okay.
and Tamas. So even the Buddha Grahas, they are related to particular gunas, the Trigunas.
Mm-hmm.
Tamo guna, the personality behavior will depend on what guna is predominating,
Hmm.
irrespective of how we consider it, even if it is a possession. Even if you explain, that's not the way Ayurveda explains it. I'll come back to that a little later.
Right.
So here, the Daiva Vipasharya Chikitsa is to bring that Shuchitva of the mind,
Mm-hmm.
doing all the puja, spiritual things. Because Ayurveda, Charaka Samhita very clearly says that it is not the Devas or the Gandharvas which are causing Unmada.
Hmm.
It is the Chidra, the karma of that individual itself, which causes this. There is no, it's very clearly mentioned the Devas, Gandharvas, or Pishachas are not there attacking. They are not entities that come and attack you. You are creating the problem yourself. So this is an area where Charaga clearly says that Atmanameva Manyeta Kartaram Sukha Dukkhayo. So you
Hmm.
please understand that all this is a self-invited problem. So I
Hmm.
think there is a very big clue there, that there is some inner personality disorder. But I will not deny that we did not have the idea of another individual and identity being superimposed on a person. How
Yeah.
that happens, that is something which we may have to explore, because we still do not know the human personality in all its depth, in spite of all scientific advances. There are
Sure.
some clues which Ayurveda provides, that it is, if at all there is something happening, it is only at the mental world. There is no way somebody comes and possesses you like a ghost. That idea is definitely not there in Ayurveda.
Okay,
But
so where does it come from then? Because it is such a popular kind of notion and understanding. I would think that only one or two, in fact, when I was searching on YouTube or even the Google and so on, barring one or two interviews, the rest were all about this is all outdated, this is all about ghosts. And we see the movies as well from the black and white times. Where does it come? Because I mean, there can't be smoke without a fire, as we say. Surely there would have been some component of the bhuta avarana, or whatever you may call it, possessing the patient as such. Surely
right.
there would have been some discussion or some mention of it somewhere.
True, true. I mean, the language in Ayurveda, it is making we make abstract things very concrete. Like if you say Brahma, Ayurveda, the Devatas are also symbolic. Like even if you look at Ramayana,
Yeah.
Lanka is the mind, and
Mm-hmm.
Ravana is Rajoguna, Vibhishana is Tamoguna, and
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sorry, Sattwaguna,
Mm-hmm.
and Kumbharna is Tamoguna.
Mm.
So everywhere the symbolism is there. So to make people understand, the Bhuta Gana, Shiva is there with the Bhuta Ganas, the tamasic element. There also, you have this idea. So these are all mental expressions which we have given a concrete identity. I've heard that a lot of mentally ill patients also engage in abstract art,
Mm-hmm.
where they try
Mm-hmm.
to, make a representation of their feelings and experiences in a very abstract way. So, in my understanding, these are all abstract. I mean, abstract, concepts which
Mm-hmm.
has been given a concrete shape. But once again, I would like to say that because in our philosophy we have this idea of the existence of the individual after death. In what form? How? This is something which needs a separate discussion. And whether in that form we can come and possess another individual mentally is also a matter to be discussed. So what I am right now pointing out is this idea of a ghost that comes with all the smoke and white saris, and that
Yeah.
is definitely not there, and that we have to exercise that ghost, because all the Buddha chikitsas are medical. There are medicines that are given, a very systematic treatment protocol is advised, and along with that some spiritual, mental purifying spiritual practices are also described. This is
Right.
what we see as treatment. So when you look at the treatment, you also get an idea. I mean, there is no idea of exorcism at all.
Okay. Let me share this. I'm sure you can see it on the screen. May not be very clear. So this is the syllabus of Bhuta Vidya from Banaras Hindu University. And I would want you to kind of take time to give an explanation of what is involved here. Obviously, there are a lot of Sanskrit words, which some of them I can understand. But can you actually explain, please, so that it is very clear for everybody what Bhuta Vidya is actually all about?
Right. I mean, see, the problem that has probably happened is because this Ayurveda has these 8 branches.
Mhm,
And one of the branches, which is dealing with psychiatric problems, has also been called as Bhuta Vidya,
mhm.
which is a broad term.
Yeah.
So, because that branch itself came to be called as Bhuta Vidya, this confusion probably has arisen.
Right.
Because if you look for an equivalent term for psychiatry in Ayurveda,
Mm.
you would end up with a term like Bhuta Vidya or Graha Chikitsa, which
Okay.
is what is commonly, that entire branch itself became called like that.
Right.
That, in my understanding, is because, even according to Ayurveda, all our mental problems are caused by, the past. We are not
Right.
able to come into terms with the past experiences.
Mhm.
So, one of the possible interpretations of the word Bhutagraga is also that a person who is seized by his own past.
Okay. So can you help us just take through this syllabus? Can you see it on the screen? I've shared it
Yes,
on the
yes, yes,
screen.
yes.
Yeah.
So here, what we can see here as the general principles of how Ayurveda understands Bhuta Vidya.
Mhm.
And there are general, lifestyle measures, like the basic concept of Tridosha is there. Because in Ayurveda, we say that the mind is also afflicted. I mean, the body is also affected when the mind is disturbed. And
Right.
in the treatment start with correcting the body,
Hmm.
because when your body is functioning well, you can once you bring back the balance of the doshas and ojas,
Mhm.
this is a principle in Ayurveda, the mind also becomes pure.
Right.
It becomes stable. In
Right.
fact, what Ayurveda says is that when you're mentally ill, you cannot negotiate with the patient directly. So Ayurveda does believe that the chemistry of the body can influence the mind, and the whole focus is on changing that in a very holistic manner, not in the kind of interventional way modern psychiatry does, like using, tranquilizers and things like that, but in a more balanced way, bringing the doshas back into balance,
Is
doing
that time taking? Does it take a lot more time
does
than the
take
modern medicines would do?
it does take time. It does
Hmm.
take some time.
Mhm.
There is a very good center in Kerala, because in Kerala was one of the only states in India where a real tradition of Bhuta Vidya was preserved. A
Okay.
family Pungudil
Right.
Mana right up to modern times.
Okay, so there
So
are two
before,
papers as I can see. First paper is all about conceptual knowledge of Bhuta Vidya, and there is a second paper which is the therapeutic aspects of Bhuta Vidya. So let's come to the therapeutic aspects here. Um, so can you actually focus on the graha, different types and nature of graha? So is that something similar to the possession or the influence of the planetary systems on us and therefore the unmada, as you mentioned?
yeah, as I told, if you look at them clinically, these are all patients presenting with, severe personality aberrations.
Right. Okay. Hmm.
So they are all that.
Hmm.
And one of their treatments, basically, we say they are all caused by pratnyaparadha, which means, an error in judgment,
Hmm.
wrong thinking. And
Hmm.
so you can see here, dhi dhriti smriti is very similar to what we today call as cognitive behavioral therapy. You
Okay, all right. So D
making
stands for D, Dhriti, and Smriti stand for?
for pratnya.
Okay.
So Charaka also very clearly says that the cause for all these graha diseases are pratnyaparadha.
Okay, can you explain that? As I said, Dhi, Dhriti, Smriti. Smriti is possibly memory. Dhriti, Dhi, what do they refer
Yeah,
to?
D means discrimination, intelligence,
Okay,
ability to discriminate what is real from what is not.
okay.
Perceiving things, the discriminating faculty is
Hmm.
this thing. So buddhya vishama vijnanam vishamam cha pravartanam.
Hmm.
That is the dhi bhramsha. That is, not only you have a wrong understanding and you also act upon it, then you will get a wrong result, an unexpected or unfavorable result.
Okay. So can I ask you this question? Does this syllabus at any point talk about ghosts, preta, pisacha, anything mentioned in this?
That we cannot see here. See, it's how you interpret it.
Right. I think there is one line which says understanding of the Bhuta, Graha, and Manas.
Yes.
What does Bhuta mean there? And there is interestingly another one which says common understanding of Bhuta Vidya in public. I guess that's an attempt to dispel the myths
Right.
among public. What do you
Right.
say?
Could be. That's
Yeah.
definitely looks like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I'll just complete the pratnya part also. So,
Okay.
buddhi is, intelligence, your ability to understand. Like I know smoking is bad.
Mm-hmm.
If I may be a smoker in two ways. One, that I don't know that smoking is bad, and so I'm smoking. That
Right.
is actually a buddhi bhramsha.
Mm.
If I know that smoking is bad and still I do it, then it is dhriti bhramsha.
Yeah.
विषयप्रवणं चित्तं धृतिभ्रंशान् न शक्यते नियन्तुम् अहितादर्थात् धृतिर्हि नियमात्मिका.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where addictions come in. I mean, you know that it is wrong, but still, so dhriti bhramsha leads a person to this addictive behavior. So you know it, but you cannot withdraw from it. And smriti is, being able to remember all this in the right context, who you are, your self identity, you know that is also lost in mental diseases. There is no sense of self identity, so all these three things influences your behavior in ways that leads to actions that can bring diseases. So a person whose pratnya is completely disturbed, completely haywire, is one who is now ready to be affected. I mean, that sense of seizing is mentioned in Ayurveda. I think it is figurative.
Okay.
That now your personality can crash and you can be overpowered, by and get transformed into another personality.
Okay.
With
Thanks.
whom you are not in control anymore, because dhriti is gone. Once dhriti is gone, once buddhi is gone, and smriti is gone, you are now not in control of yourself.
Mm.
That is why also we say that it is like being possessed, because you are not
Right.
in control.
Right.
Your buddhi has been hijacked now by all your lower emotions,
Mm.
and so you are in the grip of your
Mm.
own lower instinctive mind. So, for me, they are sometimes called as devatas. All are not ghosts. You can also be affected by devatas.
Devatas as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I think
these are,
that's an important point. Just to kind of pause for a while, where I also want to kind of not deny the possibility of when we talk about Atma Vidya and especially our existence beyond death. We're talking about subtle bodies and existence of energy in the form of energies, right? And if
yes,
we accept that there are energy levels or subtle bodies, surely we should also give room to whether we call it as part of Bhuta Vidya or not. There are therapies therefore designed to understand what is the impact of those subtle bodies or energies beyond Sharira that may
yes,
impact us. And that's where you're saying it doesn't necessarily have to be so-called negative energies in the form of pretas and pishachas. It can also be the devatas who are
Yes.
actually more sattvic in their nature.
Yes, that is there.
Yeah.
That is very clearly mentioned. So if you look at it, it's like you're mapping your mind and creating these, like on the higher plane you have the devatas and the lower plane, which are the positive negative energies of your mind.
Yeah.
And now you are out of control, so these energies play havoc in your mind. They
Okay.
push you. So this is the kind of picture that you get when you very closely look at it.
Okay.
Because in Ayurveda, very clearly it is said, once the Panchatvam Gada, once your body has gone to the Panchamahabhutas, there is no way you can exist in the physical world of time and space.
Mm-hmm.
There is
Mm-hmm.
no way you can manifest here. You are only in the Manoloka. And
Right. Right.
until there is another embodiment, I mean, there is no way you can come back.
Okay.
So
Yes, that's nice. Thank you for those who are actually posing questions. Actually, very nice questions. If I can, I'll spare some time towards the end so we can deal with those. Um, we have understood perhaps how we can assess or evaluate a psychiatric manifestation from what you have said so far. Can you cite any examples of treatment? So for us, I'm still a lay person in terms of how Ayurveda works. So can you actually relate to any cases, particularly from Itihasas and Puranas and so on, if there were any kind of citations during those times, or even in Ayurvedic text, are there any case scenarios that are described? So it's easy for us to understand how treatment applies. What kind of treatments are done?
the treatments, I mean, I'm not able to relate to the descriptions in the text, because in Atharva Veda and all, we have a lot of the Shanti Karma. The entire method of treatment, they were more suggestive.
Mm-hmm.
That you most of these rituals created a state, was trying to induce a state of mind in that individual, because normal communication is not possible, so it becomes very symbolic. Just like voodoo, I was just listening to a video of a cardiologist yesterday who was mentioning how emotions can change the physical structure of your heart.
Mm.
How voodoo is actually, it's possible to frighten a person into believing that he is going to die, and then he really dies.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the impact of these kind of rituals on a person's mind.
Mm.
So in those days that kind of treatments were done, but when you come to Ayurveda, it is more medical. Because if
Right.
you look at Bhuta treatment, Bhudam Jaya Mahimsechum, Japa Homa Bali Vratai. So these are all not exorcism methods.
Mm-hmm.
Do Japa Homa Bali, create an atmosphere which is very spiritual and sattvic, and
Okay.
that's how.
What is being done there? As in, what are the tangible benefits of a japa on a mind of an ill person?
Yeah, because according to Ayurveda, it is the rajas and tamas which
Mm-hmm.
overpowers the mind and clouds and crosses prajnaparada. Raga means rajas tamobhyam ranjanam, manaso ranjanam. That is when the rajas and tamas dominates, rajas
Mm.
distorts. Their understanding is no longer clear. And
Right.
tamas cause avarna or blockage. They don't see reality as it is. So when you do all these things, you are trying to awaken the sattva guna. This is
Okay.
a very interesting concept in Ayurveda. Food
Mm.
influences your trigunas.
Right.
If a time you wake up in the morning influences whether you will be more sattvic or not. Which place you are in. So we say don't go to cemeteries in the night, because you can get a fear. Once you have fear and your mind becomes vulnerable, then this
Mm.
whole process gets
But
activated.
but I can understand that these are very nice preventative strategies. But what about somebody who is already ill?
Already, when somebody is ill, this is to be done in the background. You have to place them in an optimal healing environment, a
Mm-hmm.
place where all these sattvic energies are activated, japa,
Okay.
homa,
Yeah.
and not put them into a cellar dark place where this will make them more tamasic. And so you are putting them into a place where we can feel that when you go to a temple or a place where you can feel your mind is suddenly feeling active, energetic. That influence you are expected to create in your patient also. But the treatment, then hingu vyosha, you start with medicines, herbal medicines. They are
Mm.
giving prescriptions actually, and then what
Okay.
else needs to be done? clear the channels, open the srotasas, come improve the digestion, bring back the doshic balance, increase ojas in the individual. Because as more and more ojas comes in the individual, the mind becomes more and more stabilized. So this is the
Okay.
treatment that is given. So this is purely a medical intervention supported by, I would call them as spiritual, interventions aimed at, bringing some alteration in the state of consciousness indirectly, because these people, you cannot directly talk to them or negotiate with them.
Okay. So from what you're saying, I can gather that Ayurveda focuses on medical treatment methods.
Yes.
Does it therefore mean that Homa, Yajna are done by somebody else and not Ayurvedic practitioners?
No, I mean, that is not so very clearly discussed in the text. It just says do that also.
Right.
Do.
Okay.
So that's always part of it. We cannot deny that.
Hmm.
Just to show that Ayurveda is, I don't think we need to be apologetic also there. That
Yes.
part is kind of very clearly there.
Right.
Deva Vipasare Chikitsa Sattvavajaya. And as the patient becomes more and more self-aware, we have to go to Sattvavajaya. Means
Hmm.
that patient has to become in control with himself.
Okay.
Then
So
only you can.
let us look at the eligible students for the BHU Bhuta Vidya course are actually medical graduates from either MBBS line or Ayurvedic doctors is what I have read.
Yes. Yes.
Once they have done this 1 year course, what kind of treatments will they be utilizing?
Frankly speaking, I am not competent to make a judgment here, because this is not a course I'm so familiar with.
Okay.
So that needs to be actually assessed independently. I mean, why an allopathic doctor is also allowed to study this,
Okay.
and with such a short period? Because there's a lot of philosophy
Hmm.
and subtle concepts that we need to understand before we can bring this to operationalization.
Hmm.
Because paroksha priya iva devaha ityukta vidvamso hasanti. There is an indirect way of representing reality in our tradition.
Hmm.
The reason is because when things are intangible, you cannot express them very concretely. Like in science, what is visible to the sense organs, you can explain very straightforward. You
Hmm.
can show an image, but the mind can grasp only when you present it in a tangible way.
Hmm. Hmm.
And the idea of a ghost, I think, is a distortion of such a symbolism.
Yeah.
When we try to concretize something which is very abstract, which
Okay.
deals with mental states. But here I don't want to bring it within the reductionistic framework of modern science, which
Hmm.
believes only in the existence of material reality, and that even the self or mind is only a product of chemical reactions. I mean, in that framework, it is difficult to fit this in. I mean, I think it is a futile exercise to show Ayurveda is scientific in that way.
Hmm.
Ayurveda opens up our mind to the intangible also. And so it has to use another language.
Okay. All right.
That is the symbolic language.
Yeah. Perhaps I'll just ask one question further, and I'll pick up questions from the audience. I think there are very good questions coming through as well. Do you foresee introducing Bhuta Vidya as I think perhaps we need to clarify or conclude that Bhuta Vidya is not about ghosts or the popular concept of understanding the ghosts in saris and all those kind of funny stuff. Is
Definitely.
Rammanohar ji has very clearly clarified that it is actually about understanding the afflictions or inflictions on the mind from past experiences, and the subtle nature of energies can also have an impact on what happens with the mind and the illness. And of course, I may not be paraphrasing everything well, but surely this is not about removing the ghost out of you kind of stuff. At least that is not the case. In fact, one description I have seen is Bhuta Vidya is Ayurvedic psychology, right? Ayurvedic psychology. Is that a fair translation?
So there is no psychology in Ayurveda. because
Okay.
we don't study the mind independently.
Hmm.
Only when the mind gets disconnected, it is psychiatry actually. It is illness. The mind is integrated with the body and the self. It is only an interface between the self and the body. You cannot catch it.
Okay.
Either you see its reflection on the body, as you do in modern science, and then
Hmm.
you reduce everything to chemical reaction because you see the shadow of the mind in your body
Hmm.
through the chemical reactions, and the body also influences the mind.
Hmm.
According to Ayurveda, it is like taptajya ghadayo rivaj. If you pour hot ghee into an iron vessel, the iron vessel gets heated. If
Okay.
you heat the iron vessel, the ghee also gets heated. So they are so it's one continuum. So
Right.
that kind of a distinction is not there. Even in Ayurveda, the word kaya, samana shariram, mind and body together.
Yeah.
So the mind, in our practically also Ayurveda clearly says you cannot catch the mind separately.
Yeah. So holistic. Holistic is the key word. I think you
Because
can't
it is
just put mind away. It is holistic. It's a Atma Vidya with the all the antakaranas and the sharira. Everything is included.
together. It is together because
Yes.
otherwise, if a person dies, you could still connect to the mind of that individual immediately if the mind was
Yeah.
existing
Yeah.
like that.
Well, it's a lesson for me because even I can, although I'm aware of the holism, I keep saying as a psychiatrist, I'm supposed to be aware of holistic approach and we practice it. But interestingly, when it comes to integrating universal, me being a universal entity, because that's what Atma is all about, isn't it? It's a universal
And, and
energy.
And
And
here, maybe I wanted to clarify a small thing like
yeah,
Atma, Manas, these to be very clearly distinguished.
right?
So when we say soul cannot possess. It already possesses everything in the universe.
Yeah.
The whole universe is completely possessed by the Atman
Mm,
already.
mm,
It
mm.
doesn't have to possess again because Atman is that all-pervading consciousness, the field of consciousness.
Yeah, it's not the
So
Atma, right? It's the
it is
Sharira with the
Brahmachari.
Sukshma Sharira, right? That's what tends to be the problem.
There, I think I am still. This is an area for further exploration. I
Understand.
hope that when modern science slowly breaks out of its reductionistic viewpoint,
Mm,
a lot of new insights about these other realities will emerge. We
mm,
are now living like an ostrich. I mean, close pushing our head inside the sand and saying this is all that exists. So
yeah.
there, I am not competent because
Mm.
that's another world of exploration. But I do believe we have still to be open.
And it's
While
so
we can,
nice to hear from you, who actually heads the research department, say that that's the principle that I was trying to get to. And why do we have to claim that we know everything? I mean, that's the attitude we all, as scientific practitioners, need to develop. We are all students forever. There is nothing to say that we know everything. And as you rightly said, you don't know everything, and we still have to do a lot of research. Particularly, Ayurveda has not been given the required scope or room for it to develop on its own. It's been modeled around medical curriculum, and you were also equally critical of how it should still retain its the original form. I think what I can conclude from discussion with you is, before of course I go to others for questions, is we need to be very patient with Ayurveda. We need to be patient, not just about results, the tangibility of the results. We need to be very patient about the subtleties, the time it may take for things to work. We very well understand the room for Ayurveda in wellness because there's so many wellness centers. But when it comes to illness, we don't really hear too much about it. So maybe Ayurvedic practitioners have a task at hand. They need to. I'm sorry if I'm giving unsolicited advice, but they need to kind of do a lot more research and bring the good knowledge to forefront, so everybody first we can dispel the myths, and second introduce more knowledge in that space. Okay, let's spare some time for some questions. I think Jinu has made a couple of points. One, Is Parakaya Pravesha mentioned in Tantra as well as in Adi Shankara's life story real? Is that considered in the same context as Bhuta Vidya?
In Ayurvedic text, there is a mention that, as your mind becomes subtler, there is this Ashtaishwarya Siddhis. The yogis are able to get that. So this is also beyond my purview because I'm not, it require much more effort to become a yogi to even experiment these things. But it is mentioned. And our acharyas like Chakravarti, they say, Etat asmadadinam eteshu asmadadinam buddhirna prabhavati. It is beyond the ken of understanding of people like us because we have to do those experiments with our own mind. Yoga opens up a completely new pathway to enhance your mental abilities, and parakaya pravesha comes from that practice of yoga and tantra, not from Bhuta Vidya. Here is a mind which is out of control.
Mm.
Bhutas relate to mind that is gone out of control,
Mm.
and where you are at a mercy of all those storms that are raging in your own mind. You
Mm.
become just a prey to that. Whereas when you talk about parakaya pravesha, it is the other point. After evolving, developing all that sattva, your mind becomes very powerful, and then you have even this clairvoyance. All those things are coming at that level of the mind. Today
Yeah.
we are being mostly preoccupied with functioning of mind, as what we call as the normally abnormal levels,
Mm.
uh, with all our limitations. I mean, we have not done such kind of explorations. So I like
Mm.
to keep my mind open here. I cannot give any proof, but I'm still exploring.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's not a we have not said the final word about it.
Yeah, at this juncture, I also need to say that there's so much spiritual science research happening in the United States, for instance. I mean, all the past life regression therapy practitioners, they've done lots of work and published lots of books which are spiritually enlightening, to say the least, beyond the clinical benefits as well. Similarly, it's very strange that the same people who are actually kind of criticizing Bhuta Vidya to be ghost, extortion and all that stuff. There's a concept called spirit releasement therapy, and I know of a practitioner who actually also does this in India. So there is a psychiatrist who belongs to Royal College of Psychiatrists. I also belong to the Royal College of Psychiatrists in UK, and has written an article on spirit releasement therapy and its benefit in one of the case scenarios that he's presented. And there is something also called as depossession therapy and all sorts. So, well, let time tell us more about all these kind of things. Yeah. So Tina Foreign has mentioned, okay, this is a question. I'll read it out. I'm not too sure if I understand it in the context. What if two people both has the same vision of someone from a past era, World War II? How is this explained by saying spirits from the past are not real? I'm not too sure if I understood the
Yeah.
question. Ramanoji, over to you.
Yeah, I don't know because spirit. This is these terms and our notions are very varied. When I
Mhm.
say, as I told you very clearly, in Ayurveda, the existence of an individual after death is accepted. We continue to exist in a sukshma form,
Mhm.
in a seed form, because when a new baby is born, we say Swakarma Klesha Chodida, Shuddhe Garbhartave Sattva. Swakarma Klesha Chodida. By the Klesha of his own karma, a Sattva is getting embodied, when conception. So there is a clear idea that there is an existence, but only thing is without the karanas or instruments of knowledge,
Mhm.
without the sense organs, you cannot have sensory perception in that state. So you are living in a manoloka with all your impressions, vasanas. You're in a
Mhm.
seed form, which only when it comes again with the. So I'm not denying the existence of an individual in a subtle form.
Yeah.
What I'm denying is that they cannot wear saris or white dress and walk around and just disappear. That is from the films. The Ayurveda is not talking about any such stuff. But
Yeah.
although it tells, and also that since it is the mental world, subconsciously, as we go deeper and deeper in our mind, we are collapsing and connecting with the universal field of consciousness.
Mm.
That is what the whole Vedanta is also about. That if you go deeper and deeper inside, the more connected you actually become. The more you go outside, the more disconnected you are becoming. So
Right.
deep inside your mind, you can go into the world, the world of the mind, the mental world of the universe. If you
Mm.
go with awareness, you are in control. If you
Mm.
do not go with awareness, you can get lost. So there could be crisscrossing, with the mental planes in the universe. We do not know about it. I
Okay.
am very skeptical and open here. I would only like to skeptical in the sense, because I've still not had a first-hand experience. I mean, I'm not taking in a negative sense. I'm
Sure.
open-minded here. I cannot deny this, but I
Yeah.
feel it is a fascinating area where we must explore.
Yeah.
And this kind of exploration can only be done by psychiatrists who are also yogis,
Yeah.
because this exploration itself requires a certain mental preparation. And
Okay. Yeah. Then, yeah, there are more questions coming, so we'll try and be quick with these as well. Gino, once again, are there cases of DID, I guess, dissociative disorders, where the person experiences physiological changes too, such as changes in allergic reaction for different identities,
yeah,
right?
whether these presentations are all psychosomatic, there are also
Hmm.
physical symptoms.
Yeah, yeah.
That's why
Okay.
I think they were called Bhuta Vidya itself as psychosomatic disorders. The
Hmm.
description
Yeah.
clearly indicates both involvement.
Okay, Nakshatra asks, I think it's important. What is Prajna Parada? Can you please explain again?
Yeah, so I had briefly explained earlier. Pratnya means our inner faculty, which has three components: Dhi, Dhriti, and Smriti. Dhi is the faculty of discriminating. So once you get a knowledge, you must be able to act upon it. So that is dhriti, enabling you to act upon what you have learned. If you don't have dhriti, then you will only know, but you will not, you become a hypocrite. And then smriti is that at the right moment, at the right time, when the ice cream is in front of us, we must be able to remember that this is not good for us. So
Mm,
unless that smriti is also there, which is
mm,
always there as awareness. So smriti is that awareness, that shraddha. In any action that you do, you bring completely translate that knowledge, what you have learned into your action. And
mm,
that is what is called as prajna. And we say all diseases according to Ayurveda caused by prajna Varata, because health education, becoming health literate, is the
mhm,
real prevention. So living with awareness, so that is a very high practice of prevention which Ayurveda is talking about. And Pratnyavarata means that when this fails,
mm.
so when you
Okay.
have a wrong understanding, when you don't act based on your understanding, or when you are not able to recollect what you have learned and translate it in the right moment,
Mm.
then
What do you say about those who are trying to become doctors by reading on Google? That is also
that's Pratnya. That's of course Pratnyavarata,
that is
the
Prajna Parada.
highest order.
Okay. Dr. Anuradha says, sir, what about Sukshma Sharira? What about
Yeah,
Sukshma Sharira?
Ayurveda believes that Sukshma Sharira exists. Charaka,
Yeah.
Sharira, Sthanam, this is very clearly mentioned.
Hmm.
Uh, uh, so,
I guess Ayurveda accepts all the concepts, whatever, as we spoke about Atma Vidya, when if it is
yes, this is the foundation.
so Karana Sharira, Sukshma Sharira, Sthula Sharira, all those must be accepted concepts anyway.
Bhutatmagaistair atisukshma rupair manojavam deham upayiti deha.
Mm.
So, Bhutatmagai. There, at that point, it is only, in the Tanmatras. The Bhutas are seen only as Tanmatras. So, it's
Mm.
like an impression. If you look at it, it also looks like just a software is transferred, from one CPU to another.
Mhm.
Once it reaches the other software, it can be installed. So in the first few years of life, the software is installed in that body. Then all that identity, everything comes and it starts functioning again.
Mm.
Till that time, it is a zipped file. I mean, nothing can be done by that individual.
Yeah.
So that is how Charaka Samhita describes it. Sukshma Shari, here Ayurveda doesn't match with modern medicine. We
Mm.
believe in Sukshma Sharira.
Yep,
Clear.
yep. Why not? That's what I'm trying to say. We need to have alternative kind of viewpoints and way to look at life. Particularly, I'm very kind of clear that looking at the spiritual science research and the consistency with ancient and the modern kind of descriptions of how the soul state and associated universal principles of spirituality, there is a huge area that we can utilize in healthcare. Yeah, as you rightly said, the Prajnaparada, the health education part, that has to come as a holistic component. Concept of karma siddhanta has to also be weighed in. What is its utility in explaining to people about their own issues in their life.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
what I feel. It's like, some of these old gems, they are covered with the dirt of misconceptions.
Yes, that is
So just
true.
because these
Misconceptions
misconceptions,
as well as the authoritarian kind of approach of the neo academics, as I would call, who would want to only kind of consider what is seen, what is felt to be true, and nothing else is so. So there's a problem there. We can't be intolerant. I think the intolerance of not accepting other possibilities of other um, you know non-perceived things to be true. I think it's all about exploration and allowing ourselves to be open.
yes.
Okay, Tina Foreign. So you spoke about people with other qualities. Are you referring to clairvoyance as it is these beings who display a broader insight and that can receive messages from those who have passed on? What are your thoughts, please? Yeah, I think
Yes.
there is nothing to deny any of these things. But anyway, Ramanohaji.
See, clairvoyance and all that are described in Ayurveda as possibilities,
Hmm.
yogina, ashtama, Ishwaram. But if you see in Indriya Sthana, if you get any of these abilities without the practice of yoga, it is not considered to be a good sign,
Hmm.
because you are not in control. You are lost. Your mind is lost, because the mind needs to be well trained, and then you must be in control.
Yeah.
So this Bhuta Graha and Bhuta Vidya, maybe it is leading to clairvoyant state. We don't know. We have to study that more very carefully. It could be. Because what Ayurveda says, these are changes that happen in the mind-body matrix, which are not in a wholesome way. And so it leads to degradation, degeneration of the personality, and illnesses. So clairvoyance by itself is not considered, it is accepted as a possibility, but that practice of yoga and slowly developing those skills, as more and more your mind becomes concentrated, its ability can increase. That
Okay.
idea is very much clearly there in mind.
Okay. Nishant Joshi says PSI refers to the combination. I don't know what PSI is. PSI refers to the combination of ESP, extrasensory perception, and psychokinesis, and there are labs. And he's given a website as well, siphon.colorado.edu, which do these experiment studies. We need more research labs like this in India also. Very true. We are really shooting ourselves in the foot. I don't know. I mean, the bunch of jokers we are becoming, honestly. We're trying to let go of everything we inherited. All the inheritance is allowed to be rusted and thrown away as if it is not my business. Where is the responsibility we are showing as, educated lot? Where is it? Where is the responsibility as policymakers? Right? Where are the leaders who are inspiring us to do the right things, for instance? There was I believe there was a department of parapsychology in one of the universities here locally, and because of criticism, they closed it, right? So it's as bad as that. I mean, there is no way that we can look at alternative viewpoints. So yes, a lot of work to do, and we are losing out because we have a rich heritage and we are not doing anything, no research whatsoever. So definitely. Nakshatra says, is it Atma is moving one body from another after person dies?
I think I already answered that the Atma
Yes,
cannot move.
yes. Okay.
It is only the mind getting displaced. The impressions that remain, till they are exhausted, it has to operate through, a physical life. So
Mm.
there is
But
no.
but Bhagavad Gita clearly talks about as we what is that the leaving the, just as we leave the old clothes and wear the new clothes, the Atma also
No,
changes.
Naroparani,
Mm.
Naraha. He says that the what
Vasamsa
does it
Jirnani.
say? Vasamsi jirnani yatha vihaya anyani granati naroparani
Mm.
tatha sharirani vihaya jirnani anyani samyati navani dehi. So dehi here is the Jivatman. Jivatman means with the Atman associated with the mind.
Mm.
Because once the mind dissolves, there is no mind anymore. It is one Paramatman.
So the
So,
Stula Sharira.
yeah, it is the Jivatman, because the Jivatman is actually not the Atman that is entrapped in a mind.
Mm.
It's called as a Jivatman. It
Right.
appears as though it is limited. So
Mm.
that is why we say the Atman moves. In that sense, we can also say the Jivatman moves. We
Jivatman
tell
moves.
in that way, but actually it is the mind, because the self, it would be self-contradictory if to say that the Atman moves, because Atman cannot move. It is
Okay.
everywhere. It is in every. So if you make a distinction between Paramatman and Jivatman, then we can say that the Jivatman moves as it were.
Mm.
It appears as though the Jivatman is moving because
Okay.
mind gets displaced from
Okay. I think
one.
for I call this as kindergarten and high school. Perhaps it's a PhD topic. At a kindergarten level, we'll accept that Atma moves from one
Yes.
Sharira to the other. That's better, because otherwise it will lead to new
Lot
complications.
of confusions. Yeah, until you understand the concept of Atman.
Yes,
That
that's
is why
right.
it also popularly got accepted that the soul moves. Because
Yes.
it's not, unless you know some of Vedanta and you do some practices and get the concept of Atman,
Yeah.
it will be very confusing to say that it's spread everywhere already where to go. I mean,
True.
it may confuse. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, now once again, I'm sorry if I'm taking more time than we
No, no, it's
agreed
fine.
to. Yeah, because interesting questions are coming through. And Nishant Joshi says, in astrology, the moon graha represents manas, and debilitation or afflictions does indicate possibilities of mental disorder. Does Ayurveda also substantiate this?
I mean, in astrology, the symbolism is there. Ayurveda has acknowledged the use of astrology very briefly. In some contexts, it is said that some diseases, especially we can see that when karmaja vyadhi, if a disease is not responding to treatment, even
Hmm.
if you find that it is very logical and reasonable, then
Hmm.
we say it is probably due to a karmaja vyadhi.
Hmm.
Like, these are situations where Ayurveda, actually, even if the treatment is not there, is there, you don't reach there in time, or the doctor is not available exactly at the moment
Hmm.
you reach the hospital. So
Hmm.
there is something adrishtam here.
Hmm.
It's not the same. It's not enough that you get a disease that is curable,
Hmm.
to be cured. Some
Hmm.
people with an incurable disease may survive because of exceptional intervention that they
Hmm.
receive at the right time. Some others with a simple disease may die because they don't get an intervention in the right time. So
Hmm.
there is a difference. So this we attribute to karma. So in such situations, Ayurveda also says pratikula graharchanam, which is, I think, also symbolism, because this is based on our theory of karma, that favorable circumstances come when you are connected to the universe, when you behave in a way that you are returning. If there is a karmic debt with the universe, then you don't have enough punya. These are other subtle concepts, which
Hmm.
I also these are also subtle, and we cannot explain them scientifically.
Hmm.
But I feel that meaning making is also a very important aspect of life.
Hmm.
So if these were very good concepts, which if used in the right way can also help us to cope with life and its situations in a much
Yep.
more meaningful manner.
True.
And I think this is very, very important for mental health also.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if it is explained and understood, the problem is, if you explain karma as punishment, then then it becomes
Yeah, it's
promoting.
learning life lessons is what I call it. Actually, I use the principles in my own counseling sessions as well, wherever it's applicable, and I do use it, and I do make a mention that if that topic comes up, It is not about punishment, it's about learning life lessons.
Yes. So that way, Ayurveda says Pratikula Graharsan in the context of such situations, it
Yeah.
does recommend.
Okay. Right. So I'll try and be quick with some of these questions. In psychiatry, our class, Hema says, in psychiatry, our classification system is based in theoretical constructs and only indicators are observed, then measured using various measurement tools. Could this be one approach to improve research scope in Ayurveda?
Yeah, I think even this concept like Bhuta and all that could be approached in this way because Ayurveda has given a criteria. If
Mm,
these behavioral patterns are seen, you classify in this
yeah,
way.
yeah.
You give this treatment, and if
And
there is a
yes,
resolution, then it's one way to look at it. I think we
ultimately, this is what I meant about subjective research. These are all observational. There is no measurement beyond. The tools are also still applied by in a paper pen format. It's nothing beyond that. It's not an ECG or a EEG or an MRI scan and so on. Okay, and I think we've possibly come to last couple of points here. Nishan says energy conservation, energy conversation or conservation maybe. I think energy conservation principle, does it apply to soul or Atma? Atma cannot be created only, it can be transferred. Is this what you were discussing?
say, in the ultimate sense, Atman cannot even be transferred. It is nirvikara.
Mm-hmm.
So there is no change, the changeless behind
Yeah.
all the change. All changes to Prakriti, not to Atman. So Atman is entrapped in Prakriti. So the degree of manifestation of consciousness depends on how refined that Prakriti is.
Mm.
The more refinement in Prakriti, just like light is reflected, the more transparent the surface becomes. In a similar way, the more refined the individual becomes through all these practices, the mind becomes subtle, then the light of the consciousness comes out more powerfully. So in Ayurveda, the theory is of no transformation. Atman is changeless,
Mm.
only Sanatana, the
Yeah.
only entity that is, at the ultimate substratum of the universe, which is beyond all this change or vikara. So
Mm.
wherever you see vikara, you can know that it is Prakriti and not.
Mm. Okay, great, fantastic. Okay, Bhavani Harikrishnan says mind gets displaced. Okay, the topic about mind or Atma moving from body to body.
That's why, I mean,
Um,
you can be in India. If you want to go quickly to America, one way could be that if you could do some tantric practices, plan your death, without a passport, visa, or a flight ticket, you can get displaced instantaneously to a womb in
mm,
America, according to the Ayurvedic theory.
yeah,
Anywhere you could get displaced.
I think one cannot deny Ramanoharji hearing this. The responsibility is very much on practitioners as well in making sure that the right narrative is built. Because if the practitioners do not show up in terms of describing what this is all about, then it is left to the journalists or the YouTubers. Everybody becomes an expert,
Yeah.
unfortunately, and they bring their own spin. Everybody has their own ideology nowadays. Unfortunately, the political ideological kind of driven narratives is so much so that it's like there's a lot of manipulative work done too. So surely it's not a level playing field, unfortunately. But we have to show up. Those who actually believe in alternative viewpoints really need to kind of make our case heard. And I think while I'll conclude here. Thank you once again, Ramanoharji, for being so patient and kind in joining me yet again for a beautiful session today. And thank you everybody else as well. But I'll conclude with one thing though here. Let us, this discussion is not about whether Bhuta Vidya is this or that. It's not about that. It is about how capable are we in being open to learning new things? How well placed are we? How open minded are we to allow alternative viewpoints? And this is where we have to particularly give importance to the roots that we have lost, and we are so happy digging our own roots out of the soil and displacing ourselves. And that is why I started this series called Connecting the Dots from Past to Future, trying to look at what inheritance we have in terms of knowledge systems and looking at how applicable they are in current times. All right. I'll hope to meet you all again in another session. Perhaps Ramanoharji will be kind enough to sit with me for one more session, which I have also mentioned to him.
Yeah, yeah,
The topic will be something on the lines of aging meaningfully.
yeah.
Okay, so
Very interesting topic, and
yes,
I also briefly looked up the link that you sent. It's, I think it would be very interesting to.
yes. So we will do it. Perhaps I'll give you some time to recover from this, and we'll meet up again. All right. Right. Thank you once again. Namaste to all.